What's up, folks? I'm Odd, by the way. So, as an artist, I follow a lot of different kinds of artists because I think that they're cool, and, inspiration can come from different places, even if it's not necessarily my style. And a few of the ones that I follow would probably either be described or self describe themselves as paleo artists, which basically are people who tend to use paleontology, like facts from bones and the information that we've gathered about like ancient animals, and conceptualize what dinosaurs and other prehistoric animals would probably look like as living creatures. Kind of a combination, I guess, of zoology and paleontology. There was a big thing that I would see where these artists, the paleo artists, would talk about shrink wrapping. And what happens there is basically if you're working with bones, they don't always tell you directly where fat deposits and other non bone things would affect the body shape. So a lot of dinosaurs, especially early on, would be depicted as basically placing skin directly over the bone structure, like vacuum sealing plastic over something. I'd seen a lot of paleo artists basically showing how inaccurate this could be, either to, young artists that were just getting into it, slash the old whatever people that had no idea what dinosaurs would ever look like. They would use modern animals that we know look certain ways because they exist and or we have pictures of them. So at some point, I think I just got a wild hair and decided to try it myself. And as an artist with very little knowledge in complex anatomy, while also pretending that I had no idea what these animals looked like, or even if they were mammals, reptiles, birds, whatever. For this particular challenge, I decided to just go with the skulls because whole skeletons felt like a whole nother game, maybe one I could try later. And this was just kind of like a short stint into it to see that if I could. So I looked up 4 skulls for this. The first was a hippopotamus. This is the one that you probably see a lot because hippo skulls look very, kind of like something you'd see laying around in Doom. Next, I don't know if you would call this necessarily cheating, but I had it in mind. So I looked up a skull for a thylacine, Tasmanian tiger. Technically, of course, they're extinct. So they wouldn't necessarily be classified as, I guess, a fully modern living animal, but we have pictures of them. There are pictures and footage, all this crazy stuff to think that there was just a species that just went totally extinct and it was fully documented not all that long ago. They are like my favorite cryptid though. Like I hope that at some point like we would find that they were like just existing outside of the sight of humans because that makes perfect sense. And that hope is something that I really hold, close to my chest, but I know the reality is more like a horror story where we should probably take into account for how quickly humans can just kind of decimate a species. It's funny though that when my brain sees the skull or even the actual animal itself, it goes, oh, that's a funny looking dog. Like, it's probably not even that close to like canids in evolution. It's a marsupial, yet it looks like that. Nature is crazy. Australia and Tasmania especially. You crazy. I also got a giraffe skull, which looks particularly weird with its teeth so low down from the rest of its mouth. It's probably an herbivore thing. But I knew the crest and the horns would be fun. And finally, I decided to choose a bird. Birds are obviously the closest living relative to dinosaurs, so I figured that if one of these was going to look the most like a dinosaur when I'm done with them, at least one with a beak, then it would probably be a bird, optimally a raptor, so like a predatory bird. I chose what at least Google told me was a harpy skull because they have awesome feather ears and look like griffins. You're welcome for that reference. The real challenge here was basically not to let my preconceived notion of these animals come out while I was sketching over their skulls. I could still kind of see where the animals' faces were in my head. Like, obviously, if something wasn't present, like a bone for an ear, I didn't know where it would necessarily go. But my brain was like, that's a hippo, that's a giraffe, that's a thylacine, that's a bird. The hippo was pretty straightforward, just making sure that those tusks were much more visible than in the mouth. It's really easy to make it just look like a demon, dragon, whatever the heck, if you just ignore the fact that hippos are chubby. And I think that at that point was also when I kind of decided to try and make them look more semi-reptilian, dinosaur-like. And so I emphasized some details over others, kind of make them look a little bit more intimidating, I suppose. I still kept with the idea of, shrink wrapping them, just using the bones as I had them. But just like in some places adding a little bit of stylized flair, especially because it felt kind of like I was just tracing over the skulls initially. So I wanted to be able to, add some pizzazz to it. For the thylacine skull, pretty much everything was the same. I was trying my best, again, not to make it look canine. And there was this one small hole I noticed below the eye hole, which probably serves some purpose that I'm unaware of, but I'm pretending to be totally ignorant here. So I've decided that that's another eye. The crazy jaw of the thylacine also was this big aspect that I wanted to keep. Like, if you don't know about these creatures, open their jaws almost 90 degrees. So imagine a straight angle. And yeah, there's videos of them yawning and making sounds, and that mouth is insane. So I went further on with that, especially because I think that the bottom jaw is a bit bigger than I've seen in some animals. That's the key difference there, I think, between a thylacine and maybe some other dog and marsupial skulls. So yeah, I decided to give the thylacine just this like super wild looking mouth at the end of the day. Give it some like flesh, like tendons in between the teeth that were visible. The giraffe was fun. I think I realized partway through that it basically gave it the same kind of feature on the top lip. Like, it's easy to see how that translates. I think it's because they graze with like on trees like they do, and they have a really flexible, like, long snout. Herbivores, man. Super weird. The crest and the horns were all sorts of fun, though, and the forward set pair of teeth, the ones in the front, that kind of just, like, jutted forward. I didn't make the nose as complete, because, again, doing the Shrinkwrapping thing, so those teeth just kind of, like, jutted forward. The bird was the most challenging to not make look like a bird. I mean, a bird's skull is pretty straightforward. It looks like a bird. There's even that weird little socket it looks like for the eye that's made of cartilage or bone. That's insane. Where I took away the ears on a lot of these skulls, I added them to the bird to get some like variation from the rest of them. And I still think the result is very bird-like, but much more dino. Like, if you were to present this to someone, they'd probably be like, is that like a relative, like a really late relative between like dinosaurs and bird, that kind of missing link? Probably isn't missing, is there? I mean, there's probably missing links everywhere on the evolutionary tree beyond, humans. But, like, is there a very particular missing link between, I guess, the transition from, like, feathered dinosaurs to birds? When would you consider a dinosaur a bird? Does it matter? Is that classification, like, highly debated? But yeah, for details and coloring, I went wild, kind of picking out these features that I would emphasize on the faces themselves. Because, obviously, like, the placement of different, like, scales and mouth parts and stuff like that was still something that I wanted to do. Still just kind of imagining these creatures if they were just fully conformed to their bones, but giving them a bit more of a animal look, I guess. But yeah, the finished results definitely really look distinguished from the original animals. I think the dinosaur intent is visible, but honestly, a lot of these just kind of remind me of dragons. This might actually be a really good process to kind of apply the mashup style aesthetic, where it's usually like a dragon looks like a reptile mixed with some sort of mammalian features, like a cat or anything like that, along with some birds. Just kind of throw everything in there. Yeah, those are my shrink-wrapped dinosaur animals. So, I know this is probably going to be a pretty short video, but I do have some more, I think, long-form stuff on the back burner. I just haven't been able to work on it. Work has been very adapt or die. I have this mode where I just kind of have to adjust. I mean, obviously, to any change you have to adjust, but I definitely have a good amount of time. I'm having a good time at work. I actually really like it. It's better, I think, in comparison so far to my other jobs. It's a little bit less, like, it's more labor intensive, but no customer service. I'm finding that I can be a people person when I'm not directly handling their money. Weirdly enough, though, after work, I am in this kind of straight creation mode on my weekends. Like, I need to make something. And I actually have the time to do that. It's just not been for video stuff. Like, for instance, I've kind of been thinking about, like, maybe selling stuff. It's pretty freeing not to immediately feel like art has to be my only income, so I'm considering it now where I haven't before, and then maybe, obviously, moving to it, I guess, later, if I could. If it's at all possible, but having an income definitely takes that stress away. So yeah, if you want, you can obviously always check out my Twitter if you're missing whatever videos. I scream into the void, post art every couple of days, and beside that, I will see y'all next time.